Thank you, everyone. Please, you can come in. You can change the Himani. Can you bring everyone inside now? Yeah. Please come in, Stefania. Come, take a seat. Come. Dr. Deepti. कोई भी आ जाए like to invite Mr. Rajan Mehta and Dr. Sudhanshu Sinha for our next sustainability Samvad. Please take a seat. Also request everyone that's standing at the door to please come uh, inside the room, and if you could just are we ready? Can we give a round of applause to the two panelists? And thank you very much for your patience. I promise this is going to be a super exciting session, and we'd love for it to be as interactive as possible. If we can just be silent and let the session begin so that the next one can start after. I'd love to introduce our panelists. Thank you both for being here. Mr. Rajan Mehta is an alum of or a fellow at the Harvard University Advanced Leadership Initiative and author of the bestseller Backstage Climate. These books are available just outside the door if you want to get a copy. At Harvard, he is focused on climate change and circular economy. He's currently incubating Climate Venture Partner to bring clean tech solutions to India and is the founder of Climate Action Labs as a platform for climate action. He has been a serial tech entrepreneur and held senior leadership roles at companies like Motorola and Nortel, and played an instrumental role in their startup operations in India and South Asia. It's also a great honor and privilege to welcome Dr. Sudhanshu Sinha. Dr. Sudhanshu Sinha was among the top 10 Indian scholars selected in 1993 for the prestigious Cambridge Nehru Scholarship for his PhD program to pursue his PhD program at the University of Cambridge in England. He is a recipient of numerous awards and bursaries, including the Cambridge Philosophical Society Award for a promising piece of research work on the Ganga River. Dr. Sinha has over 20 years of environmental, climate, and CSR work experience in India and overseas with the United Nations Development Programme, Canadian and British High Commissions. In India, Indian government, corporates, and also Indian and international NGOs. Currently, Dr. Sinha is the regional monitoring and evaluation lead of the British Council's program in 7 South Asian countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Iran. Thank you both for being here. We are very, very excited. And without further ado, we'll just hand over the podium to you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Priyanka. Thanks for inviting us. Thanks to Mobius. I think we'll first of the important thing is we'll follow the time. I think the clock is ticking at 22 minutes. So I think it'll be a Cambridge and a Harvard kind of a discussion. But no, we'll keep it simple. I think best part about this book is Backstage Climate is it talks about the science, the politics behind climate change. And the other best part is this has got 200 pages, 33 chapters. So, and these are very small chapters, like 5, 6 sides. So basically 2, 3 pages. And you can pick up any chapter and read. It's pretty simple. Picked up from a lot of technical jargons of IPCC and scientific literature and all. But it's a good book, especially for young people to understand and read about climate, different climate issues. What are the issues which he has reviewed very well? What are the opportunities going forward? So we'll just do a kind of a basic discussion uh, with Rajan. Thank you for your time. Yeah. I'll just start with the first question. There's so much literature on climate. How did you think of a book like this, especially if you write in a very simple form? And what is the thought behind it?
You know, I think it was last year, there was an international survey done amongst adolescents, and they were asked a multiple choice question. What is climate change? A was summer, winter, autumn, spring. And second was global warming, sea rise, other things. 53% of the people ticked on number one,
Okay.
right? So that was a ticker for me that while people may have information, they necessarily don't have awareness and knowledge about it.
Mhm.
And my whole idea was to write a book so that we can put the climate issue center stage, take it to the dining table of people so that we all start talking about it. Because if we start talking about it, then action will follow. So that was the main.
Yeah, because this is the latest book published recently in 2024. So it takes into account all the literature which has been in the system for last 2 decades. So that way, this is quite an updated book. The second question is, why is climate change? What is climate change, and why should we be worried about it?
Sure. I think all of us are aware about climate change because nature has been ringing its alarm bells, every so often, by way of cloudbursts, floods, heat waves, droughts, sea level rising. All of this, a lot of these things are manifestations of climate change, right? And if you see, climate change is being caused by global warming or a rise in the temperature of average temperature of Earth. And one of the repercussions of the temperature rising is that our glaciers are melting
Mhm.
and that water is getting into the sea and the sea level is rising. Right? If we take only two of our large glacial systems, which is the Antarctica and Greenland, if they melt, the sea level will rise by 200 feet.
Exactly.
So imagine a world with sea level up by 200 feet. Most of our population globally lives on coasts. Most of our cities are on coasts.
Yeah.
So what will happen, right? The land will shrink, migrations will happen, right? Migrations will also happen because of the heat that we are facing. People are migrating from arid lands and coming. Therefore, the land is shrinking. And if you look back in history, migrations are invariably followed by war.
Mhm.
So we need to be aware, aware of climate change, what it's doing to us. And it's not only people who will migrate, animals will migrate as well because they
Yeah.
want a conducive environment as well. Right? So when both migrate and come in proximity, there are a lot of diseases which are there in the animal world, right? which will pass on to humans. So we need to be ready for that. These are called zoonotic diseases. But more dangerous than that is uh, there are some pathogens and viruses in some animals called as the parasite hosts, right? Which haven't as yet come in contact with humans. COVID was an example of that, or the coronavirus. Now, as the proximity increases, there are chances of those viruses jumping onto humans. So human health will be at risk, right? Besides that, there are other issues of human health, mental health, accidents, vector diseases increasing. The third system which will get affected is the food system, because as the land area shrinks, right, the arable land will shrink, and therefore the amount of food that we are producing could be under challenge. Right? Food will also come under challenge because crops will get destroyed by floods and by heat waves. So I think that's what we are facing: habitation challenge, health challenge, food challenge, and also infrastructure challenge, which could get destroyed. That's why we need to be worried about climate change.
And this takes us to the science behind it. So, what exactly is the science behind it in terms of simple language, so people can understand? Like, what is the science behind it, and why it's being caused?
Actually, if you see, there's nothing new about climate change. Ever since the planet was created, we've been going through these cycles of the Earth
Yeah.
being extremely hot to then becoming very cold, right? Being a ball of ice to a point where there's no ice. So this phenomenon is governed by nature, and there are two things which govern this. The first one is called the orbital cycle. The second one is called the carbon cycle. Orbital cycle is governed by the revolution of the Earth around the sun and also the rotation of the Earth around its axis. And there are three drivers to it. The first one is called the Earth's eccentricity, right? Which is the trajectory that the Earth takes around the sun changes from being a perfect circle to being an ellipse, right? And it does this over 100,000 years, right? The second driver is the Earth's tilt, which changes from 22.1 degrees to 24.6 degrees every 45,000 years. And what this does is it decides or determines the length of summers in the northern pole, right? Now, you take these two phenomena together, when the Earth is kind of revolving around the sun and it's in an elliptical form, and the farthest from the Earth, it receives very less solar energy. Combine it with the fact that now the Earth's tilt is the minimum and summers are very short. So what happens is in the winter, whatever ice or snow is falling, right, does not melt in the summers because the summers are not very mild and very short. And over centuries or thousands of years, this ice starts accumulating and therefore draws us into an ice age. And the reverse is also true. That's the orbital cycle. Then we have the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle, the amount of carbon in the Earth system is fixed, right? But it keeps moving between the atmosphere, the biosphere, the geosphere, and the hydrosphere, right? The biosphere is the flora and fauna. So what happens is when the flora and fauna die, they decompose. Some carbon gets into the ground and some goes into the atmosphere. The one that goes into the ground over centuries turns into fossil fuels, and the one which goes into the atmosphere eventually comes down because of rain, and also ocean absorbs a lot of carbon dioxide. So what I'm trying to say is it keeps moving. Now, at a point in time when the carbon dioxide is least in the atmosphere, the Earth is able to radiate its extra warmth out to the space, right? But when the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases start collecting in the atmosphere, they form a blanket. And this blanket is just like the blanket we take at homes in winters. What a blanket does is it doesn't bring outside heat to us.
Yeah.
It just prevents our body heat from escaping. So the same way, uh, the blanket of greenhouse gases around the Earth starts kind of disrupting or blocking the Earth's heat from escaping into the atmosphere.
Mhm.
Now, what is happening uh, today is that we've put the use of fossil fuels, the industry, and other things on steroids. So a lot of greenhouse gases are being emitted by them,
Mhm.
and they're getting into the atmosphere. And therefore, this blanket around the Earth is thickening. Yeah. It's like your mother coming in winters and putting one more blanket on you, and it makes you uncomfortable. So that's exactly what is
Yeah.
happening today with climate.
Mhm.
So that's really what is causing. I'm trying to keep my answers short so that
Yeah.
I'm sensitive of the time, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of explanation in simple words in the book itself
Yeah.
as well.
The science is very well
Yeah.
explained, but as we all know, we all know the perils of climate change. So why is the world not doing anything? I mean, the governments or the industry or politicians or uh,
You know, climate faces a couple of fundamental issues and also a couple of really technical issues. So let's talk about the fundamental issues first. The first is climate is a collective action problem, right? If I emit carbon dioxide here, it goes up in the air, mixes, and travels everywhere. Where it shows its effect, one doesn't know. It could be in Timbuktu or it could be averaged out, right? So therefore, I, as the emitter of greenhouse gases, which are the culprits that cause global warming, I'm not the sufferer, right? And when the perpetrator is not the sufferer, though there's no incentive for me
well,
not to perpetrate, right? So therefore, climate becomes everyone's problem. So everyone's problem is no
no
one's
this
problem,
problem?
right? So that's what has been going on.
Yeah.
We've all been talking about it, finger pointing, and the gentleman before us was referring to 1972. It's exactly 52 years back.
Mhm. Yeah.
We've known this issue, we've kind of spoken about it, but very little has been done. And the pace of change is accelerating, undoubtedly. But 52 years is a long period. And this is the reason because we think it's somebody else's problem, somebody
Mhm.
else will do it, right? So that's number one. The second fundamental issue is that there's a time lag. We are living in an age of instant gratification. We
Mhm.
want results, do something and get results.
Yeah.
If we face a hot day, we want something to happen so that it cools off tomorrow. You look at companies, they are governed by the stock exchanges where they have to submit their results every quarter, right? So therefore, their decision making is very short term, whereas climate requires long term investments. And therefore, there's a lot of lip service, but very few investments going in by companies to do something about climate, even in their infrastructure, even in their processes. Same thing with governments. Our elections are held every 4 or 5 years. Our politicians come, and when they come, they know they have a 5 year term, and justifiably so, they are focused on showing benefits to people, making their presence felt. They want to show growth, they want to show development, they want to give benefits today whose costs they don't have to incur today, but in the future. Whereas climate is the reverse. Climate would take 20 years, 25 years to show results. And again, therefore, you hear a lot of lip service,
Mhm.
but very little action, very little money flowing into, right? So these are the fundamental issues
Mhm.
which actually the world's been grappling with, right? On the technical side, if you see many countries, even today, depend upon fossil fuels as governments, I won't say the major, but a large sum of governments' revenue comes from fossil fuels. If you take the case of India, 18% of government's revenue comes from fossil fuels,
Yeah.
right? Now, if we say that climate change is being caused by fossil fuels or they are one of the big components of it and do away with fossil fuels, it means the government will lose 18% revenue. they aren't going to let that happen because how will they run the country, right? So that is blocking. And it's a double whammy because if you were to address climate change, you don't only need to kind of stop greenhouse gases or fossil fuels, you also need to invest in alternate sources of energy for which you need funds. So on one hand, your revenue is coming down. On the other hand, you need investments,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So money or finance becomes a big issue. And that's what we are grappling with as well. I'll stop there
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
I
I know it's a double whammy.
7 minutes
Yeah.
left.
Yeah. Before I go to the audience, there's just one last question from me, and by the time you can think of your questions on climate change, the last question is who has caused the problem and how we are trying to solve it at the political and at the technological level.
Sure. So, um, undoubtedly, uh, the problem of climate change has been caused by greenhouse gases.
Hmm.
And greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, nitric oxide, and a lot of other trace gases. If you see, there are three uh, culprits, so to say. The first one is fossil fuels, second is industry, and the third is agriculture and land use.
Hmm.
Uh, Fossil fuels are probably responsible for 70% of the carnage that we are seeing. Industry another 20% of the greenhouse gases, and land use and agriculture 10%. Uh, Fossil fuels are primarily used for electricity generation, right? And even today, 66% of the global electricity generated is from thermal
Yeah.
sources or being generated using fossil fuels. Every year, electricity generation itself lends 36 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, right? So, what is being done about it? This whole shift that we call the energy transition, moving towards renewable energy,
Hmm.
is the initiative we are taking. So, I won't go into the
Okay.
details, but
Yeah.
I think the focus towards renewable energy is how the world is responding. It needs to be accelerated. Money needs to go in. All those things need to be done, right? The second is transportation, right? 26 to 28% different estimates uh, of the greenhouse gases are contributed by all the rides we take, right?
Hmm.
Whether it's on surface, in the sea, or in the air, right? And this whole shift towards EVs is hopefully going to help us. Now, a lot of people say, EVs is a eyewash because what you're doing is instead of you know, uh, emitting carbon dioxide from the tailpipe of the car. You're emitting it from the, power. But I don't think that's correct. We are solving for future. So on one hand, as I mentioned, the power systems or our energy systems are being transitioned to renewable. On the other, we are moving towards EVs. Hopefully, they'll meet in between, and there'll be a time soon enough that we would move to EVs and the energy will come from renewable. If we keep waiting for all the energy to become renewable and then we'll start EVs,
Yeah.
it'll take four times the amount of time. So EVs is a good thing. Second is the main source for greenhouse gases is industry. You'll be surprised, cement and steel alone contribute around 11% of greenhouse gases. Both these put together, 6 billion tons of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere.
Mhm.
And again, there's a lot of work happening on electrochemistry to see that this emission of carbon dioxide in the chemical processes of those industries be reduced. Right. The third, which is the land use and agriculture. A lot of us here would think that something as natural as agriculture, how can that be a
Yeah.
culprit? But 10% comes from there. And it starts from when we are establishing agriculture or creating farms, we clear the forests and we do that either by burning the forests or by cutting them.
Mhm.
Either way, uh, carbon dioxide goes into the atmosphere. Right? Then when we till the land,
Yeah.
again, a lot of air and carbon dioxide, which the soil holds, gets out. The microbes get exposed, they get decomposed, and again, carbon dioxide gets out. When we grow things like rice and all, we flood the fields, right? And the microbes which are under the water there, they start fermenting and giving out methane, which is 80 times as powerful as carbon dioxide. So that, and then between the time of harvest and the food being consumed by us, 33% of the food is wasted. And wasted food means decomposition and carbon dioxide going out. The last and most important is the livestock. They give out methane.
Yeah.
We don't realize, but unlike us, the livestock, the cows, and have four stomachs. So in the first two stomachs, because they take complex sugars, there's fermentation that happens, and they give out methane, which is what you see. You see them belching,
Yeah.
right? And that's methane coming out 80 times as potent or more potent than carbon dioxide. Again, their manure is, very, very methane intensive. And the last point, if you and me were to put up 1 kg weight, and let's say we have to consume 10 kgs of food for that, the cattle for putting on 1 kg of weight consumes 80 kgs of food, 8 times. And that food is not dropping from anywhere or is not now coming from just grazing. This is being produced, it's being cultivated, right? So imagine the amount of food that is being cultivated for them. 17% of the Amazon uh, has been cleared just for cattle feed in the last 25 years. So these are the three which cause. And again, a lot of solutions coming for all these things, for even the cattle part. Uh, there's probiotic food now coming, which if you put an additive into their feed, their methane emissions go down by around 30%. We're all talking about uh, plant-based meat. If people who are interested in meat shift to plant-based meat, then of course the demand for cattle will go down, and therefore that will help climate as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Any questions from the audience? I'll say, young people. Any questions on climate? Something which has been bothering you? Yes, sir.
Soil organic carbon in India. What is the current position of the soil organic carbon? What kind of steps government is taking? That's number one. Number two is the people are shifting to the electric vehicle, right? So how do we say that? Is it? I mean, how do you justify that? Is it a clean solution? Because we are taking how many 66% of soil burning, right? How do you use a clean technology?
Yes. So there are two different questions, one on soil organic carbon and EV.
So I'll answer the second one first and then come to the first one. We are very early in the technology curve for EVs, like every other technology. But if we were to project and take a far-sighted view, I think we'll be fine. I'll just give you an example. Around 3 years back, I just got interested in batteries and I Googled how much of cobalt is there in a lithium-ion battery, and Google popped up approximately 20% by mass or by weight. Just before coming for this conference, I again Googled and how much cobalt is there in a latest lithium-ion battery. The answer was 2%. Right. So that's the technology curve we are going in. The way we are going, the culprits in a battery system, which is the main component in a EV, are lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Right. All very, very polluting, energy intensive. I think in the next 5 years, 10 years, the batteries that you will see would probably last for 100 years. You can use and reuse this material over and over. And even lithium, which is supposed to be a rare material, is not really rare. It's found everywhere in the world, right? And it's absorbable in salt water. So they've now started finding reserves of lithium in the brines. It's a question, and technology is being worked how we kind of get it out from there. So I think the world is conscious about it, moving towards that. uh, there will be a point where I think we don't need to worry too much about the batteries, the environmental destruction that the batteries are causing. But we have to go through that curve. The first question, I'm not really very conversant with it, but I can tell you there's been so much of erosion of the soil and the soil carbon because of tilling, because of overuse of insecticides, pesticides, fertilizer. Uh, there are, at least what we've started doing now is measuring it, right? And the measurements are not very healthy. There is, there are ways to kind of, uh, you know, recarbonize the soil. We could have a discussion outside. I'll be happy to share some of the thoughts that I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, ma'am. Next question.
What's your so what's your take on the heat island effect of urbanization? So all cities are also contributing and they're becoming heat islands, and that's
Mhm.
again adding up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've seen this over and over in a lot of places. Um, in fact, as if you map a city in concentric circles, then you see the core is the hottest and it kind of,
Yeah.
and urbanization definitely is contributing because there's a lot of ambient heat that gets retained. Uh, a lot of initiatives are being taken for that. Uh, if you look at cities like Melbourne, Los Angeles, many others, right? Uh, the tools that are being used for that is one is greening the city, and there's a science behind it. Now, how do you green it? Greening at every place doesn't help, right? Then they are using reflective material, not only on the roofs, but also on the streets, so that that material is not heat absorbing, but heat reflecting, uh, you know. But I must add uh, the other side of it also. Uh, while there is a heat island effect, if you see overall, dense cities, if they are properly designed, managed, are better for climate than the semi-urban sprawls that we have, right? Because overall, per capita basis, the material used is lesser. The surface area that you create that absorbs heat is lesser. It's a question of if you do a case study on New York, for example, that would be much more sustainable uh, than the equivalent population of New York living in the suburbs. So there are methods, and people are deploying that. At least the consciousness has come that we need to kind of address the comfort level of people in the cities because of the heat island effect. Happy to discuss further with you.
Yeah. Just one or two more questions and then we can discuss it later. Yeah.
My question to you is about common but differentiated responsibilities, and this has been taken since Paris Agreement, but uh, in terms of financial help that developed countries give to least developing countries or island countries, it's not very defined, or it keeps changing over a period of time. There are promises given but never catered to it. So, how should this entire policy around this work? And there should be some sense of consistency around the funding that helps us grow all together. So, how do we figure this out all together?
So there are two questions you have. One is what is common but differentiated responsibility? Then the second is a different question about the funding part of it, you know. So common but differentiated responsibility is the best thing that could happen. Uh, and that's the best clause in the Paris Agreement. Because if that clause was not there, the world would never come together, right? Because what that says is it's given the liberty to all nations to decide how much they want to contribute, right, in terms of emission reduction. They've given a target that's a global target and said, okay, you come. So every country is putting its best foot forward. Now, whether they are doing it or not is a separate question, but at least theoretically, there is a framework that is kind of driving us towards the goal. So that's the common but differentiated responsibility. The second question is definitely the problem of climate has been caused by the developed world. There's no doubt about it because they were the first ones to, in a way, discover this black magic or black gold, right? And they understood its power, used it for their own industrial, military, social growth, right? And now that we've come to this situation, uh, they're saying everybody now kind of come to the same platform and go to renewable, decarbonize your industry and all that. I'll say two things. One is it is in the interest of the developing world to put its best foot forward because God forbid if climate disaster strikes somewhere, right? If it should not strike anywhere. If it strikes in the developed world, they have the technology, they have the wherewithal, they have the money, and they have the systems to take care of the disaster. If it strikes in the developing world, we have nothing, right? Therefore, our whole hope is on nature, right? That nature will come to our rescue, nothing should happen. And if we want nothing to happen, then we must kind of follow the line and stop adding greenhouse gases, right, uh, to the atmosphere. In terms of the money, right, we definitely want help. Developing world does want help from the developed world. Uh, there are a lot of discussions going on around that. They haven't been able to work out a solution. But I think there's enough pressure on the developed world to loosen their pockets now. There are some solutions given in the book as well, if you read it. But it's been a tough fight, and that's why it's taken 50 years. Nobody is easy with money, but hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah. So yeah. So on that note, thank you so much. Sorry, one or two questions are left, but possibly you can pick
I'm
up the
happy
book
to
and
take
get it
questions.
signed and talk to him as well individually. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
And I think we can all
Thanks
take
a
up
lot.
more
Anytime.
questions and discussions with sir outside. And please check out his book. It's really nice. It's outside. I don't know why am I excited. It's the science and politics of climate change. And that's why. But thank you for such an insightful discussion. It was
Thank you.
lovely to hear your thoughts on it. And this is how learning from experiences works. Thank you.
Thanks.
Um, Before I forget, I would like to request Priyanka ma'am to kindly felicitate Mr. Sudhanshu. Thank you.
I got, I got it.
Maybe he can do it with me.
Thanks. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so I would request you all to please settle down and hear our next set of speakers. We have two very fantastic sustainability leaders with us, and I would like to call Professor Nidhi and Ms. Stefania to the dais, please. Thank you. I know you're tired, but you can still clap louder.
Well, I'm happy to see some groups. This is going to be interaction, yes, not just two of us talking.
Okay, so before I hand over the mic to our speakers, I would like to quickly introduce them. We have with us Professor Nidhi Nagabatla. She is a senior fellow and program lead for nature, climate, and health at United Nations University, Belgium. She has nearly 25 years of experience in sustainability science and systems analysis. She holds academic and professional roles at various universities around the world, like in Canada, Bolivia, UK, Germany, Nigeria, and Belgium. She is a contributor to various UN initiatives and has coordinated more than 500 projects worldwide, both in global north and south. A huge round of applause for that. That's a big number. She is actively involved with UN-led initiatives like IPBES, WASAG, and PEDRR, where she is also currently the co-chair. She is a published author with over 250 works related to science policy interface. So it's an honor to have you with us, ma'am. Yeah, thank you.
You can call me Nidhi.
Okay, it's
I
an
love my
honor.
name.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Nidhi. We also have with us Ms. Stefania Fontana. She's with us here. Thank you, ma'am. She's a skilled project management assistant at FLA in Milan. I am sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the name.
Don't worry, I will do this.
Yes, thank you. With a keen focus on environmental sustainability and project coordination, she plays a crucial role in supporting the development and implementation of various environmental initiatives. Ms. Fontana excels in organizing and managing project timelines, coordinating with stakeholders, and ensuring that environmental projects align with Foundation's goal of promoting sustainable development and environmental conservation. Her expertise and dedication contribute significantly to the success of FLA's mission to foster a healthier and more sustainable environment. With that, I'll not bore you more, and let's hear a round of applause, and I'll hand over the dais. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Well, welcome to this dialogue, and I like to call it that. We'll also maybe we'll talk a little bit about what we do and how we do that, and then let's make it more interactive. Ask us questions, clarify your doubts. If you want to be a sustainability scholar and leader of tomorrow, this is the time that you understand that it is going to be challenging road, but it might be a difficult journey, but the outcome is that you can transform and be a partner in transforming the life of millions of people around who care about sustainability. So a couple of sentences about United Nations University. We are a UN think tank, so we're like the brain of the UN. We do advanced research, and we have a three-pronged agenda. One is to do advanced research, then transform that research for policy related outputs, and just positively push uh, desired policy outcomes. It's a very tough pathway. I will explain you why. And then do capacity building. So we have a couple of programs, masters, postgrads, post